Hey, it's Jay. I wanted to extend a special thanks to those of you who have listened and left reviews on iTunes for this podcast. Please leave a review if you haven't done so already. We sincerely appreciate it. We're producing this show independently, and unfortunately, that is not free. We have to pay for digital hosting space, software, equipment, websites, and travel out of our own pockets. But we'd love to keep this show going as long as possible. Please show your support for this podcast and give it life by making a donation to www.bigbuckregistry.com/donate or pledge your support by visiting www.bigbuckregistry.com/pledge. You can also find our app in our Apple App Store called Big Buck Deer Hunter 2015 and in the Google Play Store for Google and Android devices. Thanks for your support and enjoy the show. Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 111. The Salerno Brothers, hunting the Adirondack Mountains of New York with Tim and Randy Salerno. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey, this is Dean Capulano from Swarovski Optic and host of Swarovski Optic Quest. You're about to listen to another great episode of the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hi, this is Jen O'Hara.
And this is Narissa Harmon with Girls with Guns Clothing and Universal Huntress TV.
Get ready to gear up for another amazing podcast with Jay and Dusty on the Big Buck Registry Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey, this is Nick Miller. And this is Jake Miller from O-Town Outdoors. And you're listening to our favorite deer hunting podcast,
the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast.
Welcome to the show. This is Jay Scott, your host of the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast. And you know what? We're back here again on the mic. And I can't think of any place I'd rather be than with you right now, right here, talking about deer hunting.
You know? Oh, man. It's amazing. Every week that we get to do this, week after week after week after week. I just love it, Jay.
It fills my soul, I have to say. One of the best experiences of my life is just sitting here talking about deer hunting to our contingent of diehard listeners and fans on Facebook, people who love deer hunting just as much as we do. I just can't think of anything I'd rather do on a Saturday morning, to be honest, except for maybe hunt, of course. But if I can't hunt, I want to listen to people talk about hunting.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some great stories everywhere about hunting, and that every story is different.
Yes, very much.
Never hear the same story. That's probably one of the coolest things about hunting.
Yes. Well, there's so many different individuals hunting with different tactics and styles, and you have different deer and different antlers and different growth patterns and different nutritional values across the country in different areas. They all have different feeds and, just so many different variables. And if we can cover a few of them and then find the common denominators that make everybody successful, then we've done our job.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the goal.
Absolutely. And thanks everybody for tuning in with us.
Yes, thank you so much. If you like this show and you'd like to help us a little bit, pledge your support, you can go to bigbuckregistry.com/donate. We do not have any sponsors on the show at this time, so every single nickel comes out of our pocket to keep the show going, and we want to keep this thing going as long as possible. You can also go to bigbuckregistry.com/pledge, and you can pledge your support on a per-show basis. So if you could do that and you have a couple extra bucks to throw around, that would be fantastic.
Absolutely. Much appreciated.
Now, this week, Dusty, we're talking to the Salerno Brothers. I don't know if you know who they are.
Yeah, it's I do, and it's very unique because it reminds me a whole lot of Lane Benoit in the Benoit family.
Yes, they have similarities to the whole Benoit clan, and they're in fact several of our listeners suggested after we did some shows with the Benoits or with Lane that we reach out to the Salernos because they wanted to hear their story. I think they're less known, but I think they're as talented when it comes down to it.
Yeah, absolutely. But, it's going to be a great story, Jay. I got this feeling.
So we're going to talk to Tim and Randy Salerno of the not so well-known Salerno Brothers, but man, are they skilled. The deer that they have hanging on the wall and the skill sets that they bring to the woods and the things that they have to do to be successful in the woods in the Adirondacks of New York, where you basically just disappear into the woods for miles and you don't think about the drag. It's basically what it comes down to.
Right, yeah. It's going to be a great, great story. I can't wait to talk with him, Jay.
Let's get them on, man.
Let's do it.
Tim and Randy Salerno, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, fellas?
Very good. Thanks for having us.
We're psyched,
yes,
man.
Absolutely.
I've heard a lot about you guys.
Very good. I hope everything is good.
It is. You're kind of a mysterious family, I have to be honest. Like, I've had a lot of people say, hey, I'd like to know more about the Salernos. I know a lot about them because they might know you a little bit or they've heard a little bit about you, but I haven't heard a lot about you. So that's why I wanted to have you on the show. I wanted to hear more about your story and your family.
Sure. Sounds good. There's a couple of the brothers that do some shows and some seminars, and I think there's a few of us in the family that aren't really into that and just go out every year and just try to shoot a good buck and post our photos. And with our jobs and working all the hours we work in the off season, so we're able to have our hunting season off. We're not really available for the show circuit.
Right. Is it fair to say that hunting is more important than advertising your names to you guys?
Yeah, for me, I'm a blue collar person. You know what I mean? We're out there doing the grind every day, and we understand the cost of just hunting. And for me personally, I don't really like to go out and do seminars. What I do is I like to talk to people personally on like Facebook.
Yep.
And it's not a showmanship or it's not about money. It's about getting together and just talking to each hunter, because we're all trying to do the same thing, and that's to shoot a nice buck.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Let's talk about the family setup, the family dynamic. Who's part of the Salerno family?
Well, it mostly started out with my dad, Pat Sr., and his brother, Paul Sr. Those guys were brothers. They both grew up in Port Henry, and they started hunting, at a young age. And, as they developed their families, all of those guys started coming along, and we just all started, hunting on the weekends when our parents had time off. And then it's grown over the years, where we really started, getting really into it full time, and to the point where, we started taking our whole seasons on every year. It all started from my dad and his brother. Started it back in the 50s when, they were young kids, and it's, went into the 60s with my two older brothers. And then, as me and Randy got old enough to hunt, we jumped in, and it's been going strong, since the 60s, right through the 70s, and we continued it.
And how old are you guys now?
I'm 53.
Okay.
And I just turned 45.
Okay. And your dad, and it was your dad and your uncle, is that correct?
That's correct. Yep, my Uncle Paul.
Your Uncle Paul. What was your dad's name?
My dad's name was Pat.
Pat.
Pasquale Salerno.
Okay. So Pat and Paul. And did they ever tell you any stories as kids, like what it was like hunting back in the 50s and 60s?
Yeah, we heard a lot of them, eh, Randy? Oh, yeah. My main thing is when they first started, when they were really young, they had a big family. My father, actually, his family, there was like, what is there, 8 or 9 of them. And basically when they went hunting, it was hunting for food, whether it was deer hunting or rabbit hunting. So that's why they really started, hunting was just to feed the family. Exactly. And it's a big Italian family, and they all stuck together, and he just tried to support the family any way he could.
Gotcha.
Yeah, back then there was no trophy hunting back then. I mean, those guys were meat hunters.
Right.
They went out on the weekends, and they were coming home with deer to feed the family and to give meat away to people that needed it. In the 50s, that was a tough time in this area.
Right, gotcha. Now, where is this area? Where are you guys located? Where did you call home?
Port Henry, New York it's on the eastern edge of the Adirondack Park, the High Peaks.
Okay.
And Port Henry's in Essex County, New York, and it's right on Lake Champlain. Small town, maybe 3,000 people. Pretty much a seasonal area. Very nice, small community.
Okay, gotcha. So tell us about some of your earliest memories hunting with your father and your uncle.
Boy, I'll tell you one thing that comes to my mind is, I was a young kid. I was probably, I would say 7 or 8 years old. And I remember my father tracking a deer, and I was tagging along. And, when you're a little kid, you don't have a real big attention span. You're just kind of, looking off in the distance, and you're just breaking sticks and stuff. Well, I remember my father took one shot. I heard a shot ring out, and I go, holy Christ. I said, Dad, what are you shooting at? And he said, I just shot a deer. And I go, deer? I didn't see no deer. And he goes, here, he says, follow me. He walked about 150 yards through all this crap. And I looked there and I couldn't believe it. I saw a dead deer laying there and I said, holy Christ myself, how in the hell did he shoot that deer? And my father looked at me and says, you know what? He says, the element of surprise. I remember him telling me, he said, you have to see that deer before it sees you. And I was stunned, and I'll tell you, I was hooked after that.
That's an interesting lesson. What other little lessons did he teach you when you were out there with him?
Wow. Starting I remember at a young age with me, just kicking along with him and, showing me, what the deer were feeding on, what a buck rub was, what a scrape was, just a lot of little things. And I remember, just carrying a stick and tagging along. And, years ago in the 70s when we were hunting, we used to make drives. I remember certain areas where we hunted. I remember I would, as I got a little bit older, I would stand out from him, start out maybe 20, 30 yards, and then I'd go to 50 yards, as I gained more confidence, learning the woods. And, eventually I got out of sight of him. And then, it wasn't long after that, I was actually carrying a rifle and going at it with the rest of the guys. And I remember, sitting home on weekends, when I was a real young kid, waiting for them guys, waiting for the headlights to pull in. And I'd be running around the house, peeking out the windows, looking to see if they brought home a buck. And I think, remembering that type of stuff is just what brings me back every year.
Oh, yeah. One other thing that comes to mind is, I grew up playing sports. My father played professional baseball. And what he taught me was, like, when he was teaching me how to swing a bat, and he told me, like, the mechanics and practice. But he says, if you want to be a really good hunter, he says, you have to make the adjustment, because things don't always play out as you want it to play out. And he said, you know what, you have to make the adjustment according to what your environment is. And boy, I'll tell you, that stuck with me, and that he really helped me there. It makes you methodically think about what you're doing when you're in the woods.
Right. Yeah.
Good one.
I remember, with him playing professional ball and being a professional athlete, I think he played from 52 until 1957 in the Dodger organization. And, I remember, all of us guys played 3 sports in high school, and I remember coming home, after games, and and Randy will remember this too. He'd sit you down for 20, 30 minutes. He'd tell you all your mistakes, what you did wrong. He was always wanting us to improve, and I think that's boiled over into the deer hunting. It's a reflection of, what he did in his life. He wanted to make sure that, we were doing the right thing and learning and getting better at, something that we all enjoyed doing.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
What would you say your style of hunting is?
Boy, it's our style. I would say from where we hunt in some of these high mountains is you got to go with the condition of what you go in that day. One day it may snow, the next day it's raining. The next day a cold front comes through and you got that crunchy leaves, or it's windy. I'll tell you, and you have to adapt to the type of conditions you have. I'll give you an example. When it rains, a lot of guys don't want to go out in that rain, but for me, I love that rain because I can cover ground. And when you can cover ground, you're less noisy. You're focusing and you're trying to pick that woods apart in order to see that deer. So it just depends on what the conditions are, and you have to adapt.
That's right. I think the last few years too of hunting in the Adirondacks too, we haven't had a lot of snow during the season. We usually, we get some towards the end of the season, but I would say we're shooting probably 85% of our bucks out of leaves. And, we turn into we still hunt a lot. We'll fan out. We start high in the morning.
Okay.
We climb.
Now, when you say you start high in the morning, what do you mean?
We start high in the morning. We try to get as high as we can. So, if we know some mountains, some ridges that, have some good buck sign on it, where they're or they're traveling or chasing some does or feeding, what we try to do is get above the bucks in the morning. We'll take advantage of a state trail, logging road, anything we can to get as high as we can to the point where we feel we're above the deer. And then once we're above the deer, we're going to fan out, and we usually sit for probably up to an hour in the morning. And then what we try to do is still hunt downhill all day.
Interesting. Okay. And so you're getting to the highest peak. Are you getting there pre-dawn kind of thing?
Definitely. We're starting out in the dark, and we're hoofing it, the first hour, at least, depending upon certain areas where we're hunting, but we strip right down in the morning and we get high. Try to get as high as we can to the point where we feel we're above the deer. And then once we're above them deer, and then we're going to start coming down on them, we use that to our advantage. I mean, if you're chasing a buck all day long and he's got the advantage on you and he's above you, there's not too many hunters that shoot bucks that are above them. It always seems like you're going to shoot those big bucks when you're coming down on top of them.
That's an interesting concept right there. That's I haven't heard that yet on the show, but it makes a lot of sense. If you're starting at the top, how do you decide which way to go?
Well, I mean, it all depends upon, from previous days hunting that same area, or, like the trail cams now. I mean, I put out dozens of them. I use them to my advantage now. I let them do my scouting for me. Mm-hmm. As we've gotten older, we're not able to cover the ground as like we used to. So, we're starting to use the technology, using the trail cams, putting them out on scrapes, putting them in notches, funnels. We're using that to our advantage now, finding out what's on some of these mountain ranges before we even start the hunt season.
Okay.
Right. See, what I like to do is when you're on the top of these mountains or ridges, you like to get both sides of it. So you'll go back and forth to each side and you'll stay high. So you'll be able to look down and see, and you want to stay up there as high as you can. And then as the day goes on, then you start hunting downhill. And the reason what you'll do is when you hunt downhill, you'll see the sign as you're going back and forth, and you'll figure out which side, that deer is. Is he on the north side of that ridge or the south side? And then you're hunting down. Usually that wind's coming up to you, so you'll be hunting into the wind.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
As the day rises, the winds, even if it's still, are going to rise out of the valley towards you, so you're always downwind of the deer, basically.
Right. Oh, right. Yes. Oh, yeah. That's the key, is that wind. You don't want them to get a whiff of you because you're fighting all their senses, and I think that their nose is pretty good.
Yeah, at times it's so unpredictable, too. I mean, when you're hunting, you can't just turn around and go the opposite way. If you feel you got something hot in front of you and you're in a good area, at times I don't even pay attention to the wind. I go with it. There's just some days when the wind is just swirling, it's all over the place. So, it's some days it's to your advantage and some days it's not.
Does the sun play a factor in the way that you track downhill?
Not necessarily. I don't think it really does. That's a funny thing you brought that up, is because, see, I don't usually wear glasses, but when I do go hunting, I do wear glasses, and I get a little prescription so I can see a little bit better. You got to get as much advantage as you can, but I have those glasses that tint into the sun, or when there's snow on the ground, it tints.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, that's helped me a lot.
No kidding.
Interesting. Tell us more about that.
Yes.
Yes. How does that help you?
I don't wear it. It's just the glare from the snow and also the sunlight. And any advantage you can get, I'll tell you, you got to get it. Because you know how these deer are. I'll tell you got to be one step ahead of them.
No question about it. Yeah, you got to be ahead of them.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So as you're coming downhill, is it a bad idea to start at the bottom and work up? Is it always the case where you start from the top?
From our experience, hunting the high peaks and the bigger mountains in the Adirondacks, it seems like the bigger mature bucks, they always want to climb. They always want to get out of the lowland and they want to get high, and they want to find a safe place to bed. With our experience over the years, it's, years ago we'd start low and we're always chasing them uphill. You're just climbing all day long. And then about 20 years ago, we said, the heck with this. We said, let's sacrifice that hour in the morning and get high and use that advantage coming down on top of them bucks, knowing that they're down below us. And
right.
Is there times when we don't get as high as we want? Definitely. But for the most part, if we know there's a good buck working in an area, we're doing everything possible to get high.
Yeah, I think the other thing is when you're high also is when you're higher up, there's a little bit more hardwoods up there where you're able to see down. And then as you're coming downhill, you're able to pick apart the thick, swampy stuff. You know what I mean? So you're coming down on them.
Right.
Gotcha. So as they're on the move, if for some reason they spot you and they start to move into the thicker stuff, at least you know that you're going to be dealing with swamp at the bottom. And then
Right. Yes. And when you go through, you can pick your way through.
Right.
Through that swampy stuff, but you're still above them though. But as you're coming down, you're still above them. You have that advantage that they're down below you. Because usually these deer, when they go up and they bed down, they're facing downhill or into the wind. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's why it's better that you're above them and you got a greater advantage when you're above them.
That makes sense. So as you're strategizing where to go, you find an easier route to the top of the mountain, it sounds like. Is that correct?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're constantly, the night before we're talking about what we've seen the previous day. I mean, we're all picking each other's brains and, trying to figure out what we're going to do for that next day's hunt, how to shoot that buck. And, we're looking at the maps and, if we can use, state trails, and if we can get up there to our advantage to get up high and get above the stuff. And, it's a psychological game even amongst us. I mean, there's competition. I mean, it's, we sit there at night. Some guys, they're a little mum about what they saw because they know there's a big buck in that area and they want to get a crack at them. But, we hunt as a team and, we have fun as a team and it's a whole team effort, and that's been our majority of our successes, hunting together.
Okay, so it sounds like you're taking in a lot of intel. You're talking to each other. You're hunting a spot. You're kind of getting an idea of where the deer are hanging out. You're using your game cameras to decide which side of the mountain they're most likely to be on and hunt into them from the top down with the wind in your face, generally speaking.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Now, the other thing is we have these cameras pretty much they're all over the Adirondacks. So you kind of we're trying to narrow it down where we see a big buck, whether it's got a big rack or a big body, then we zero in.
Right.
And it could be 4 or 5 miles back. It could be 15 miles back. And in the Adirondacks, there's no ATVs or taking your 4-wheeler back or your duck rack.
There's no roads. I mean, we can't get on roads when there's snow and just drive and find tracks. I mean, when we decide where we're hunting an area, we have to hoof it in, hunt all day, and then we hoof it out. So it's not like we can, pick and choose between bucks. We have to go back on these mountain ranges, these, 10, 20, 30, 40, 60, 70,000 acre parcels of land. It's overgrown forest. It's not logged, and you have to go in there and you have to hunt all day long. And, and that's what we do. We go in after them. We're very aggressive. And if we don't have the snow, we're still hunting. We're fanning out. Everyone knows each other's pace, and we're just moving. Everyone's moving all day long.
Okay. And are you all like in a general area when you've decided where to hunt? Like, so where everybody kind of started, but still spaced out enough to make it effective.
Right. I say yes. We're kind of in the proximity. If there's no snow, then we're kind of close. We could be 400 or 500 yards apart. We could be a half a mile.
Okay.
That's the difference. When there's no snow, then you kind of have to stay and still hunt together. And what it is when you're together like that, these deer, sometimes they don't just leg it and just go straight for 4 or 5 miles. They'll try to cut back on you. So our strategy is to cover ground, to kind of, spread out a little. And the majority of these deer, they'll cut back and hopefully they'll run into somebody. But when it's snow, boy, I'll tell you, it's a mad dash. You're looking for a track, and when you get that track, it's off to the races, and who knows where you all end up.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think it's big time. Like he said, a lot of our success has been, with the still hunting is, hunting 400, 500, 600 yards apart at your own pace and picking the woods apart at a slow pace, stopping and going. And, one of my brothers may jump a buck, he may be 600, 700, 800 yards from me, jump a buck. He'll run in front of him for a little ways, and he'll hook left or hook right. It seems like they always want to hook back, and, chances are once we get one in between all of us, he's a dead buck.
Gotcha. So let's talk about how you get to your access point. Are you looking at like Google Maps after you've scouted some areas, you've kind of decided where to go? Do you take the road to the furthest point in that you can get, and then from then on, there's no 4-wheelers, there's no more truck access, it's on foot completely from there on?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You try to get in through these wood roads or the trails and then hit the wood rows. And then once you get past those wood rows, you don't want to climb these mountains. You're trying to get through these little the guts and the little cuts that go through these mountains.
Okay.
To get back to where you want to be.
Gotcha. So making that access easier for you to get to where you need to be to start.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is from years' experience, hunting some of the same areas over the years. We know our way in and out some of these areas and how to hunt them certain ways.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense. Now, how many, if you don't have snow, this is a still hunt. How slow is slow?
We all go at our different paces. I'll tell you, me personally, I like to go real slow. But what I like to do is I like to pick that woods apart. If I know that I'm in an area where I previously been in an area, and I know that there's does in that area or there's some buck rubs in that area, boy, I slow right down. But when I go into areas where I need to go and get there, then I speed it up. But my whole thing is take your time, pick the woods apart, don't jump that deer, get a crack, get your first shot off, which is the most important shot, and make it count. And you got to see that deer first.
Gotcha. Let's talk about the shot a little bit. What type of firearms are you generally carrying?
I've actually switched in the last 5 years. I've gone to a 30-06, 7600 pump, to a 30. I like that gun. I do. I've always used to use a bolt action, a 7mm 08 model 700 because it was light, and I had that thing whittled down and probably 6.25 pounds. But in the last few years, I've gone to a pump. I like it. I can throw a lot of lead in the herd with that thing, and I can some quick follow-up shots, and I've gotten accustomed to it, and I'm using that now full time.
Okay.
Yeah, me. You know what? I've had the same rifle since 1976. My father gave it to me.
No kidding.
Oh yes, it's that 30-06, the 7400 semi, and I've used it year in and year out. I love that gun. That's boy. My wife gets mad at me because I'm always thinking about and talking about that gun and cleaning it, and boy, she gives me hell every once in a while.
Gets a little jealous, huh?
Oh yeah.
Nice. So you switched to the Randy. You said you're the one that switched to the pump.
No, I did.
Okay. And what are you doing? Like open sights with the gun, or are you talking about scope?
Yeah, we all use scopes. Yeah,
Scopes,
I got
okay.
3 to 9 on there. I use.
Okay. All right. So scope pumps. Got it.
Or you think a scope gives you the advantage when you're kind of spotting, stalking, walking like that?
I do because our pace. I would say 8 out of 10 bucks. We're shooting them either standing or sneaking away from us. Because we're not moving at that fast pace. If we're tracking and the conditions are right, and I'm running on that buck trying to catch up to him. We do shoot at running bucks too, but we've shot a lot of bucks in the bed. And we shot a lot of them just sneaking away, feeding, catching up to them.
Yeah, that's one important part up there. Up there where we hunt in the Adirondacks, it is thick. And boy, when you see a deer sneaking away, you got to get them in that scope as quick as you can because you've only got 3 or 4 glimpses of them, and that's it. So the quicker you get them in that scope and you're able to see them, you're only going to have maybe 1, maybe 2 shots at the most. So for me, I've learned to keep both eyes open and lead the deer. That when that buck comes into the scope, that's when you touch it off. You can't follow it. You got to let him come into that scope. That's where it's important to keep that other eye open.
Interesting. That's a very good point. Actually, yeah, especially when you've got a small window of opportunity to make it count.
I'm going to ask kind of a question that I'm curious as a listener listening to the show. The success rate of you guys spotting, stalking, and tracking like that. What can you give us kind of an average on your success rate?
I mean, I would say every year we're shooting 3 to 5 bucks every year. We're
Nice.
probably letting 10 to 20 bucks live. We've been doing that for years, and it's helped us over the years by not shooting the younger bucks, and we're doing it on state land. A lot of these areas we're letting these younger bucks live. We're giving them that opportunity to get to that 4.5, 5.5, when they start getting that big body, and it's helped us tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when we hunt, me personally, and Tim, he can speak for himself, but we hunt about 30 to 35 days for the season. So you don't see a lot of deer, but the deer you see, you got to be choosy because you want to get that. Me personally, I like that big body buck, and if the rack is big, that's a bonus. For me, I like that big body deer.
Okay.
And You know what I mean? It's your 30-day hunt. You got to be choosy.
Gotcha. So you're looking at the body. Rack comes second. You're not rack hunters. You're body hunters for the most part, and that makes sense in the areas you're hunting for sure.
Right. Once I see the horns, the antlers, the rack, then I just focus. It's all focused right on that body.
Okay. What's the average size of the deer that you're killing?
I would say, the average bucks we're shooting are 3.5 to 6.5 year old bucks in the Adirondacks. Anywhere from 170 pounds, to, we shot them 220, 230, 240.
Okay.
The big ones are far and in between. They're tough to get, but, we put our time in every year, and, they're in the areas where we're hunting. It's just, there's got to be some luck.
Gotcha. And as far as the differential between still hunting versus stalking or tracking, how much of your time is spent tracking versus still hunting? And I'm sure that this is weather related, of course, because you need snow. How often are you tracking versus the still hunt?
Yeah, again, it just depends on when it snows. But we like to be, when we go up high, more than likely, we'll have snow towards the end of the part of the season. So what we do is we like to stay high and try to stay on that snow. But if there's no snow, and we're on those leaves and we're just trying to cover that ground to, get in an area where we know that we've seen deer or there's does during the rut. You want to be around those does.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense with the does. I've heard that over and over. Find the does, you'll find the bucks. Is that kind of your attitude?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. What do you prefer if you had in a perfect world, stalking or tracking?
Perfect world. Every northeastern deer hunter is, 4 to 6 inches of nice fluffy snow where you can, sneak around and get on a big buck track and, after a storm, catch them feeding or, be able to catch up to them, on that nice fresh snow. That's perfect conditions. When we just, over the years, we just rarely get that anymore. It's, you get a few days of it and then we lose it. And it's discouraging when you're hunting on snow for 4 or 5 days and all of a sudden, boom, it's gone and you're back to leaves. And, all the square miles that we hunt, it just seems like, every day you got to put 3 to 5 miles through the mountains every day just to even see a deer or get a glimpse of a deer. It's tough when you lose the snow.
Right.
Yeah, me personally, I like that snow because, boy, when you're tracking, you need to know when to speed up, when to slow down, when they're feeding, when you think they're going to bed. Are they circling? What do they get into the does? And then you're trying to figure out which way they went. I'll tell you, that's the mental part of the game. Boy, when it's snowing, it's on when it's snowing. And you got some snow to track them. That's the challenge right there is to get them that way with snow.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like the snow more than anything, especially if you can get into spots on public land where you can roam. That's my favorite thing to do. And I completely understand where you're coming from.
Absolutely, and you put in the miles, boy. When that snow, these deer, they'll go up and over mountains, and you got to be in shape. I'll tell you to climb some of these Adirondack mountains.
Yes.
Yeah, it's as we've gotten older, we're having to get in better shape every year. To be able to do it.
Right.
It's it's strenuous, mentally and physically on your body. It's a struggle every year.
Completely agree. Do you guys do all your hunting in that area, or do you go to other states as well?
No, we've born and raised right here in the Adirondacks, and our heart is right here. And honestly, I can't see myself ever going elsewhere. It's something I love to do, and we've had offers to go to Canada or go to Maine or this and that, but my heart is right here in the mountains.
Okay. And Randy, how about yourself?
Oh, I'm the same way. You know what? I was born there. I grew up there, and that place, I just fell in love with. People don't really realize that the Adirondacks is the biggest part in the lower 48, and I cherish every moment I'm able to go in there and hunt.
It's a special area, and I've never really spent a lot of time there, but it seems like one of those areas that I would fall in love with, to be honest. It's
absolutely
my kind of place, my kind of hunting.
Absolutely, and you know what? It's just some of these ranges go on and on and on, and nobody's been back there. It's off the beaten path, and that's what gets me going. Is that you're back in an area where nobody's been, And when you shoot a nice buck back there, boy, I'll tell you, the gratification is unbelievable. But it's the tough part is doing it year in and year out. And boy, when you can do that, you've done well.
Right. I would like you guys to each think of your most memorable deer hunt, if you could, and kind of walk us down memory lane and do a play-by-play for like the last 48 hours. You know, set the stage. Let us know how you got to where you got to, and bring us all the way up through the kill shot, if you could. I'd like to have Dusty kind of be our guide, if that's cool, and let you guys take us on a hunt. I assume we're going to New York for both of these hunts. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right, cool. Tim, let's start with you.
I'll tell you, my most memorable hunt, I'd say, happened 2 seasons ago. And luckily, we got up that morning. We had fresh snow. We had about 4 inches. And I had gotten a couple of real nice bucks on my trail cam that fall. So I knew there was a couple of good ones up on this mountain range. So, I fired everybody up. And I said, let's go. Let's climb. Let's get back in there deep. And, one of us is going to cut one of these buck tracks in there. With the conditions being the way they were, I knew somebody was going to get a crack at one. So I was pretty motivated that morning. I took off, and I got in there about 2.5 miles to where I wanted to get, and got up on some hardwood ridges there, and I cut a nice buck track, and I could see it was fairly fresh. And I started tracking that buck for probably 2 or 3 hours. And, I told myself he was heading uphill. It definitely wasn't above him that day. And I said, I got to move. I got to cover a lot of ground to catch up to even have it get a crack at this buck. So as I kept tracking that buck for the next hour or so, I noticed he started slowing down, feeding a little bit, meandering around, acting like he wanted to bed down. So I got into a certain area where I actually left the track, and I climbed. And I went straight uphill, and I got up onto some little bluffs up on top of the mountain range there. And then I started breaking to my left, peeking back down, where I figured possibly he might be bedded. And it was just one of those days when the snow, you could really see well. And I was coming off some ledges, and I was sneaking down through there, and I come through a little tight notch and kept peeking down in that area where I thought he was going to be. And my luck, I looked down there, I caught a little brown patch down in there. I said, man, it looks like a deer. And I got to a tree, braced my gun, which I always do. I always try to make sure I'm against the tree so I can brace that gun and take him out with one shot. And I scoped down in there, and I could see the body of a deer laying down in there. So I took my time. I said, he doesn't see me, doesn't smell me. So I just kept working my scope around there. Finally, he turned, and he was looking up towards me, and I caught his bases, just his bases of his rack. And I scoped the jewel right down, and I could see they were nice thick bases. He looked like a good, he had a big cow head. He was a mature-looking buck. So I just took a couple deep breaths and had my gun braced right on that tree. I remember I just zeroed right down and went down his neck a little ways and got, right where I felt comfortable. And boom, I squeezed one off. And that was it. I see him flop right over in the bed. And, it took me about 10, 15 minutes to get down to where he was down in there. It was a nice 10-pointer, 194 pounds. And, something that I'll remember and cherish the rest of my life.
Absolutely. Let's get in a little bit more detail on that. So you was actually trailing the deer through the snow, headed uphill, and you decided, what made you decide to cut off and get above him?
Well, I knew that if I kept tracking him at the angle he was going, he was climbing. He was going back further. He was going back to bed. And I told myself, if I stay on his track, he's going to be above me. And I said, chances are I'm just going to see a flag, just a little bit of brown, and him running away from me. So I used it to my advantage. I said, I got to climb and take my chances and get high and try to come down on him. And that was in my mind that day, is to get high, come down, keep trying to sneak down on him and catch him down below me.
So it just basically boils back to getting up above and being able to actually put the sneak from above looking down.
Exactly. And, that day I was, most of the other hunters were down below me. Because I had hooked it back in there pretty deep. And if I had a couple other hunters with me that could have flanked me to my left and right, I probably would have stayed on the track, or I would have put somebody else on the track, and I would have tried to get as high as I could. But in that circumstance, getting high and coming back down on the buck, I was able to succeed that day.
Right, absolutely. Tell us a little bit about your gear setup when you're doing all this hiking. What kind of gear are you wearing as far as footwear and clothing articles?
Mostly, if it's not real wet conditions, I like to wear fleece because it's quiet. I try to, I like to wear a fleece vest. I wear Under Armour undershirts. I try to stay, I dress light because I'm moving all day long, and I always keep a few extra shirts in my pack. But if it gets real snowy and wet, then I'll go to like a muck boot, and I'll go to Gore-Tex. I use a Cabela's, the MP50. It's not the quietest stuff, but it keeps you dry, and it's a good material. It's pretty tough because we're going through all that thick crap and constantly running through all kinds of stuff with it, and it's good quality stuff.
Yeah, I say, I say to myself when I get up and I get dressed, I say go light, but even go lighter, and just carry, your gun, ammo, your rope compass, and a lighter to light a fire just in case you got to light a fire, and that's it. Because when you're humping 10 miles, 15 miles in, and then 10 miles back, boy, you got to be light.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Because
it's funny. The last couple of years, we've had a young kid. He's been bugging us to go hunting, so we've been taking him hunting for the last couple of years. Every year I tell the kid, Jesus, strip down. I said, you're carrying, you got too much crap in your pack. I said, we'd stop on the trail and we'd look, and he'd sit right down like a dog. He'd be so tired out. And I said, look, you're carrying too much gear. You got to just wear lightweight stuff. Throw an extra jacket or something in your pack. Because the kid, I kept trying to tell the kid, explain to him that he's got to strip down. And, the kid was getting tired out because he was carrying so much extra clothes and food. And, my theory is eat a little bit in the morning. You can eat that night. Just take a little bit to get you through the day, but go as light as possible. I mean, it's the only way you're going to be able, to go 3 or 4 or 5 miles in a day and be successful. And, hopefully this year he'll do well, the young kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very nice. Randy, how about yourself? Let's go on a deer hunt with you.
Boy, let me see. I'll tell you one deer hunt. We started out at camp, and for the next day hunt, we had a map out. We're all looking at the map, and everybody's saying, "Well, I'm going to take this angle, and I'm going to go up on this ridge, and the other guy, I'm going to take this on the north side, come in." And so I was listening, and I said, "Geez, I got to get an advantage here. Back to that being high." So I said, you know what? I said to myself, I'm going to be the high man this time, right? So that day, boy, I hoofed it in, and I hoofed it as high as I could get, right? So I remember sneaking along. We didn't have any snow. I was sneaking along, still hunting, looking to my left, looking to my right. All of a sudden, I looked to my left. Holy crutch, I see a deer, and I kept looking at it. Holy, I saw the big body, and I kept looking for the antlers, and boy, I saw the rack, right? So I drew down right on him, boy, and I put it right on his chest, boy, and boom, I touched it off, right? And I see the deer take off, and I said, geez, was that another shot? I thought, I heard another shot, right? So I sneak over there, and I'm looking where I shot, and I'm just kind of looking around, and all of a sudden I look up to my left, up about 400 yards up above me, 300-400 yards up through the hardwoods, and I see another hunter up there. I go, who the hell is that up there, right? I'm going, who the hell is up above me and way back here? So I'm looking, all of a sudden he's coming down, and I look, and I said, what the hell? That's Timmy, my younger brother walking down, right? That's my boss. Right? And I go, geez, did you see that deer? And he goes, yeah. He says, I saw that deer. He says, I shot. And I said, you shot? I said, I shot. I go, are you kidding me? Right? So we start heading over where the deer ran, and geez, we only walked about 100 yards, and I looked at the deer, and I go, what the heck? I shot. The deer was facing me. So I hit it on the left-hand side of the deer, right? Well, Jesus, we flipped it over, looked on the right-hand side, and that deer had a bullet hole right in its heart, right?
Yeah.
So I go, wait a second, that wasn't my shot. So I flipped the deer back over, and I looked on the left side where I was shooting. I just grazed the bottom of that deer's chest. And I said, why, that son of a gun, Timmy, got above me, and he killed the deer. And that goes to show you, you know what? This guy was one step ahead of me. I wasn't one step ahead of the deer. This guy was one step ahead of me. And I was shocked. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a game. It's a cat and mouse game every day with those guys. I can tell you that.
Oh, absolutely. You got to get as much advantage as you can. And I tried to get advantage of Tim, and boy, he beat me through it.
That's great.
That's a great story. I don't think I've ever heard anything like that. Wow.
So was you upset? Was you upset, or was you pretty proud?
No, I wasn't upset. All I care about is if somebody shoots a big deer. That's all I care about. As long as that deer's down and we got him, I don't care who shoots him.
Awesome.
Exactly. that's the fun part.
That's
when,
fantastic.
When it all comes, it's the best part when it all comes together. We can all stand around that nice buck, talk about the day, and then then the hard work starts. Getting them out.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and if you want to see that deer, we got it posted on our website. We have a website, and I think that deer was killed back in the early 2000s, I think. And we got a picture of that deer on beautiful 10.
That's excellent. Randy, what would the Randy of today tell the Randy of 20 years ago, knowing what you know today?
Wow, good question.
Well, I guess so.
You know what I would say? Today, I'm more patient than I was 20 years ago. I say 20 years ago when I was going through the woods, I wasn't methodically, going through things weren't going through my mind as much. I was just hunting the land, instead of hunting for that deer. So I would say methodically, it's what you're thinking at that time. When you're going through the woods, you have to concentrate. You have to focus. And what you're thinking is going to create your action of what you're going to do. And you got to be always thinking and deducting thoughts according to what the conditions are. And I think that's my main thing is thinking things through. I wish I did it 20 years earlier. Maybe I would have shot more bucks, but that's just the way it is. It's that thought process.
Gotcha. All right, Tim, same question. What would the Tim of today tell the Tim of 20 years ago?
I think first thing probably leave the girls alone during hunt season. It's like,
That's a great thing to tell a 20-year-old guy.
All right. Good luck.
Yeah, you leave the girls alone for the hunt season so you can get up in the morning. I think the main thing is like Randy said, back then, you were just hunting the land, boom, boom, boom. I think now, pay attention to detail. I think there's, when you're in the woods, there's so much out there to see this. I mean, pay attention to the rubs, the scrapes, what's going on, what they're feeding on, where they're traveling, where they're bedding, what you're seeing, and put that whole puzzle together. And I think, at a younger age, if I would have known some of those things, I think, I probably would have shot a lot more bigger bucks than what I have. And, the main thing is, for these young hunters is slow down. A lot of guys move too fast in the woods. When you start getting that feeling, you feel like you're around some deer, you're seeing a doe, or start slowing down, scanning, and always stop next to a tree. Get in that habit of stopping next to that tree so you can put your shoulder up against it, brace your gun so you can take that buck out with one shot. So I think my main thing would be, slow down, pay attention to detail, and, try to hunt as much as you can, get in the woods as much as possible.
Oh, yeah. That's the key, I think, is that, it's when you walk into the woods, it's like you're walking into your home. You know what I mean? That's your place. You enjoy doing it. You like being there. You're comfortable, and you got to be at ease with yourself when you go in the woods. There's nothing else should be going through your mind but just shooting that buck, and that's it. There's your mind doesn't wander. It's like playing in any sport. You focus. I remember, when you're playing, basketball. I remember playing basketball. You don't hear the crowd. You don't even sometimes you don't hear your coach. You're so focused that it's like tunnel vision.
Right.
And that's the name of the game.
That makes sense. I like that. That's really good. Let's talk about some of your favorite things that you like to bring into the woods. If you had to name one thing other than your firearm that drives you nuts, if it's not in your pack or in your pocket, and you left it at the truck, what's that one thing that you got to have with you at all times?
For me, I'd say my grunt call.
Your grunt call, okay.
My grunt call. I mean, I've killed a lot of bucks just, jumping them out of bed, seeing them run, and then actually blast, with my mouth real loud, really aggressive blast to get them to stop, and then get to a tree, and then, then start in with your grunt call, tapping it a little bit, and if you catch these bucks at the right moment, when they're running and they're curious, shot a lot of them just come right back looking, think it's another buck, and, they're curious. I mean, they're not the smartest creature. I mean, yeah, they do outwit us a lot, but, if you can play it just right, they'll come right back to you.
Yeah, but mine are it's really two things. One's a real simple one, but one's a real important one. The simple one is you shoot a buck, you got a buck down, and everybody looks at each other and says, "Hey, do you have a rope?" You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
right.
Going, oh
Good.
shit, I don't have a rope.
Good
you know
point.
What I mean?
Good point.
Right?
Yep.
Got to have a rope. I'm telling you, because you're done if you don't have a rope.
It's a very good point.
Something that's easily overlooked.
Yeah, yes, easily it is. And the second one to me is a cover scent. I think it's important to have any kind of cover scent. I'll tell you what I do is, they have a lot on the market and everything, but you know what I take with me? An apple. And I take that apple and I'll eat it, and I'll rub that apple all over my boots, in my pants, anything to cover. I'll take a branch off an evergreen tree and I'll rub it just to try to get rid of that human scent.
Yes, I've heard that many times. I haven't heard the apple technique, but I think anything you can do that's from nature makes you smell like nature. That's a good idea.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Okay, so I've been thinking about this. You've been hoofing it into the woods, the deep woods, without a four-wheeler. You're not driving there. You're 10 miles back. What happens when you shoot a deer 10 miles back? How do you get out of the woods?
Well, it's brutal. We dragged them. We dragged them out in the dark. We dragged them. We hung them overnight. Got them back in the second day to get them out. To me, it's the hardest part is getting them out. It's brutal at times. I know Dustin, our cousin, shot a buck. I think it was 2 seasons ago, and it took us 2.5 days to get it out.
Wow.
And, it was way back in. He had shot it, and he had wounded. We tracked it. We left it that night. We had to hoof it back out. And we went back in the next day, caught up to him, finished him off. And then, the long drag starting out. And there was 4 of us that day. We teamed up, 2 on them, 2 carrying the guns and resting. And we went at it till dark. We hung them up in a pine tree, went out, got a good night's sleep that night, got some good food. And then we went right back in the next morning to get them out. Some bucks we shot, we've shot a mile from the road, some 3-4 miles.
Right.
It all depends on where we're hunting, but it's tough dragging. Drag the hide right off them.
Absolutely. You can't, you don't have a four-wheeler to go get them. You can't drive it out there. You take turns, just dragging as a little bit at a time.
Yeah, that's the key is, you have 2 guys dragging, drag it 200-300 yards, and then the next guy will keep dragging. The thing to me is, a lot of people say, well, why don't you quarter it and, quarter and take it out?
Right.
It's just that we go back so light, we just don't have anything to quarter, to carry it out with. You know what I mean? We don't carry a backpack. We don't carry, one of the big backpacks.
Right. Gotcha.
So what we do is we muscle right onto it and we take it out, So that's why we don't quarter it out, because we drag it out, we get it to a spot, we hang it in a tree.
Gotcha. Tim, what would be a book that you would recommend to our listeners that you like a lot that helped you learn about hunting?
Well, I tell you, the Benoits have came out with some great books. Right. They pretty much, they do, we do the same thing they do. We do it over here in New York. Those guys are more onto the snow over there. Right. A little higher elevation. Those guys have written some great books. A good friend of mine, Dan Ladd's written a nice book about the Adirondacks. There's some good reads out there. That's something that people have been bugging us about, for us guys to write a book. And I think, we need to put some time into it and, get it down on paper. So all of us guys sit down and write a nice book about, right from the beginning, right up to, what's gone on in our lives as, deer hunting in the Adirondacks. I think, we could put together a real good read.
I agree.
I
agree with that wholeheartedly.
Me personally, I like the books, even the magazines. I'll read some of the articles that somebody said. You know what? You're always learning, and I think these young hunters should get these magazines and read them from front to back.
Yeah.
And learn as much as you can about deer hunting and store it away. Just get that information, save it, and use it.
Exactly. I think
any way possible.
The Northeastern Big Buck Club magazine is a good magazine. I like that. It's got a lot of good articles on a lot of good stuff. You get to read, what's going on in different states, and that's a great outfit, the Northeastern Big Buck Club.
It's funny you say that. I'm looking at an issue right now, actually. It's sitting right there on my desk. I had Gary Ciardelli sign, because he shot a big deer in New Hampshire, and I was at the award dinner the other night, and I had him sign the front of the cover, and he practically fell out of his chair. He's like, nobody's ever asked me for my autograph before.
That's nice, yeah. Those Jeff Brown and those guys do a great job with that organization.
Yes. I agree.
We've had, I've had numerous my bucks scored by them, and just a great bunch of guys, and they're very beneficial to the industry. There's no doubt about it.
Yep. And
that's good. You know what I also think is a lot of these good hunters should write some articles and send them into NBBC and even some of their local papers. as much information as you can get out there and let these younger kids, read that, and it gets them involved, gets them mentally thinking and gives them a little advantage, and so they'll enjoy it.
Exactly.
I completely agree, and that's part of our mission here on the Big Buck Registry is to produce this new media, which would be a podcast, which all the kids are into. They're into the tech music and anything you can have on a phone, including podcasts. So we're hoping that we're tapping into some hunters that are listening on the new way to listen instead of a radio or CD, that kind of thing. So hopefully we're getting that message out to younger hunters, hopefully through the podcast. And if you had one hunting tip each, Tim, let's start with you. What's your number one hunting tip of all time?
My number one hunting tip of all time, I would say, for me is get in shape. Get in shape, be ready to go beginning of the season. Go start using the trail cams. I love them. It gets me in the woods early. I'm able to place them out. It's a lot of fun. Being able to see what you're picking up, no matter if it's deer, bear, whatever. They're just a great scouting tool, and I think young kids should have a couple trail cameras. And I think it's almost like a whole different hobby for me now. Putting them out, setting them out, checking them. It's a lot of fun. Yep.
Gotcha. Randy?
Boy, what my tip would be is I think it's the most important is shooting. Anytime you go to shoot a deer, you're not always going to be positioned perfectly. You're not going to be behind the tree to be able to brace your gun. Or your left foot, for me, right foot won't be out in front, or, you're climbing a mountain and you're halfway up, you're out of breath, or it goes to keeping both eyes open. You have to be able to shoot at any time, any second when you see a deer, and you may not be positioned right. So you gotta be perfect. You gotta be a perfectionist in order to, shoot a buck. Because it's not going to come easy. When you first see that buck, you gotta be ready, and you gotta get that first shot off, and you gotta make that first shot count.
Good one. I like that a lot. All right, last question, guys, and we'll let you go. How do you handle the anti-hunter? Have you ever been engaged with an anti-hunter?
Yes, I have.
How do you deal with it?
I think it was 2 seasons ago. I was walking up a trail, and it was first thing. It was in the afternoon. I was walking up this trail, getting back. I was doing an afternoon hunt. I came across 4 ladies coming down the trail, and I had my gun on my shoulder, shouldered, and I kind of stepped off the trail, and I could see they were coming at me. Then they started giving me the dirty looks, and the question is, why are you hunting? And what are you allowed to be on this trail? And I had to bite my tongue,
right.
But I tried to explain to these ladies, look, it's a sport, it's a tradition, it's been around longer than we have. And, you need to realize that the sport isn't going away. And, I understand there's a few bad apples out there that, create issues for all of us. But, I tried to explain to them that it's ethical in what we do. And most hunters are good people and just like they are. And I tried to explain to that. They started in about, my weapon and why am I carrying an assault weapon? And I had to explain to them, I'm not carrying an assault weapon. I'm carrying a rifle that has, 5 rounds. And, I try to explain to them that, I'm not out here just to shoot deer. I let young bucks live. I'm out here trying to shoot a nice mature buck. And, I try to get into their brain a little bit. But some of these people, there's no common sense between your ears. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle for all of us hunters, to have to deal with this type of stuff. But, hopefully, we can get back on track here next year, and get a president in there that's, gets this country back on our feet and protects our, our rights and our Second Amendment.
Right. Randy, how about yourself?
What I explain to them is when I go deer hunting, and you probably heard it before, it's like I'm going shopping to the store because me personally, I like steaks, I like hamburgers, and so does my family. I have 4 kids and a wife, and what I like to do is I go out and barbecue my steaks, my hamburgers. It gets my family together. We all sit down at the table, and we're all eating hamburgers or steak, and it gets us together. And we're all talking, and it makes us a family, and it benefits not just me, but it benefits my kids, and it benefits my wife because they appreciate the animal, the whitetail. And to me, we're showing respect to that whitetail. It's not disrespect, it's respect. And that's what I tell the people that confront me, and they don't like, deer being shot. And that's what I tell them.
Gotcha. Good one. Look, if the listeners wanted to reach out to you beyond this microphone and this interview, how would we reach you if we had other questions?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, me personally, I'm on Facebook. I have my personal Facebook, and then we also have Salerno Brothers on Facebook.
Okay, give us that website address again.
Our website is Salerno Brothers with an S.com, and then my Facebook is Randy Salerno, and then our Facebook is Salerno Brothers.
Okay.
And what I do is I get a lot of guys on there that message me. I tell you, to me, it's better than a seminar because I can sit down, I can type in there, and they shoot me off questions, and I'll let them know, what I think, and it'll be a back and forth thing. I'll spend hours on there talking to guys about deer hunt. I'll tell you, I love it. I absolutely love it because it's a personal thing on there, and where he's learning, I'm learning, everybody's learning. It makes everybody a better hunter.
That's excellent. I like that. I appreciate that. That's really great. Very cool. Well, guys, this has been an extreme pleasure. I've learned a lot tonight. And Dusty, I would imagine you've learned some stuff tonight too.
Absolutely. It's always very unique to be able to talk to a set of brothers that the skill level and the technique level that you guys are at. A real honor to talk with you.
Very much so. Just really,
thanks.
Really awesome. Just learned a ton. And guys, I'd like to pick your brain again for another hour at some point. Maybe down the road, if that would be okay.
Thanks. Yeah, we appreciate helping you guys out anyway, anyhow, anytime.
Very cool.
Absolutely. I think the most important thing is, again, back to it being just getting those young hunters in there and getting that experience and enjoying the outdoors. That, to me, that's what it's all about.
Exactly. No, for the listeners out there, feel free to reach out to us, guys. We're very sociable guys. We help anybody out. Questions, they want to talk about stuff, feel free to reach out, through our Facebook or personally friend us, and we'll help anyone out any way we can.
Awesome. That's so great, guys. I appreciate that. Man, how'd you like that?
Yeah, that was awesome. Jay, it's amazing how different areas and different terrain is hunted so differently.
That blew me away. I have to be honest. That blew me away.
It taught me some things about the area out towards you, the style of hunting that's not in Ohio.
Right. It's definitely not in Ohio, and it's not that far from you, actually.
Right. But it's different in so many ways, but yet the same in so many ways.
It's a state thing. It's a topography thing. It's a geography thing. It's based off of the woodlands and the forest managers and how they decide to do things. The crops, there's no crops around where the Salernos are hunting, and they had to learn how to effectively hunt from the mountain tops to trial and error to figure out that you go from the top down, not the bottom up.
Right. And that blows my mind, because here it's so different because we're so flat.
Exactly. I was going to say that you don't have really tops and bottoms. You have like little mountains here and there.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely different. And, for somebody that's in that area that's similar to where they're hunting, man, we learned a lot for that area, Jay.
Yep. And I relate to that kind of hunting because that's the kind of stuff that I get myself into, whether I intend to or not. It's I'm always on a mountain range somewhere, and that's the kind of hunting we end up doing around here. And of course, we prefer to have some snow. And where they are, it's a little bit warmer climate than where I am, so they don't always get the snow. So they're almost even more challenged at trying to figure out where these deer are hanging out. And it sounds like they get a lot bigger area to cover. Sometimes in a tracking situation, at least you know where the deer are hanging. You can get on a track and just follow them if you can figure out how to follow a good deer track endlessly.
Right, sure.
But that's different where they are. They don't have snow. I'm surprised that it just seems like the challenges in that scenario are greater than pretty much all the other hunting that I've heard of so far.
Yeah, for sure. It's it's amazing how that they've discovered different techniques to hunt that area.
Yep. Love the story too about the double kill shot.
Yeah, it's amazing.
The single kill with the double shot, I should say.
Right.
Just
how often does that happen?
I've never heard that before.
Me neither, but it makes for a great story.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks again to Randy and Tim for joining us on the Big Buck Podcast. And next week, Dusty, we have Girls with Guns coming up. We've got
that's going to be a great story too. I got a feeling
it is great. We've got Jen O'Hara and Narissa Harmon, who are the founders of this company, who have also started a television show, but they're hunters first and foremost. But motivated comes to mind. The word motivated. They're just fantastic ladies, and they're getting it done.
Yeah, it's a great line of products. If you can check them out, do that.
Spread.
I think that the female in your life is going to really appreciate it if you order or something.
Yeah. I like that they're spreading the word through about hunting through cool, stylish clothing.
Right. Yeah. It's like up to date, really nice looking clothing.
I mean, for years I hunted in my dad's old military fatigues.
Right.
Just, because I was the same size as he was for the most part for a long time. And that's what we did. They were, by today's standards, they were just hideous, but they got the job done. But these girls are actually getting the designs right and finding even people that are supportive of hunting but don't hunt themselves are wearing their products. And that's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And it's something that's offering for the women hunters in your life.
Definitely.
That's the really cool part.
Yep.
It's not all about the guys. Take care of the women.
Good stuff. I'm going to get my wife some of their products, by the way. So, Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week this week?
We do, man. We really do, and it's something that it's kind of like one of them traditional things. People say, oh, I wouldn't do this or do that. But there's some things that just for years gone by that, people say, oh, I wouldn't drink coffee in a tree stand, or I wouldn't, something of that nature. But naturally, aroma of coffee is something that the deer are attracted to, and I don't know why. I have yet to figure that out. Like brewed coffee, for some reason, every time that I take coffee to the woods with me, brewed coffee through a thermos, pour it into a cup. Every time, seems like the does come my way.
Is that right?
And my grandfather swore by it. Coffee brings the deer.
Coffee.
Yeah. It's just one of the things where I've experienced it, and it's almost like I tinkered around with it. I actually dumped some out by a feeding station. Like where I had some corn on the ground. I just said, heck with it. I'm dumping some of this coffee and see what happens. Mm-hmm. These does come in and they lick the guts out of this coffee on these leaves.
They didn't get all jittery?
No, they didn't get all jittery, but I think it's just something that the aroma attracts them.
That's funny. Interesting.
So something maybe you can try out,
Well, I'm going to try it out. I try everything out that you tell me to try out.
Oh, boy, that could be scary.
I hope you're not joshing me on this couple.
No, I wouldn't josh you. It's something.
Yes, you would. See, that's the thing. You would josh me just to get me going.
No, Jay. Not when it comes to whitetail hunting.
You wouldn't josh. You wouldn't josh the listeners. That I know.
Not when it comes to whitetail hunting.
All right, man. I'm down with that. I'll try some coffee. In the woods.
Just something.
I love coffee in the woods in the morning. There's nothing that I mean, that's one of the things I always miss because I like, the deer are going to smell it. I'm just going to leave it at home, and you've changed my mind.
Yeah, it's something you can try. Just experiment with yourself. Dump a little bit out and see what happens.
That's awesome, man. Good deal. So, Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out with me here on the Big Buck Podcast?
A lot of places, Jay. Facebook.com/Chubby Gobbler. Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. If you want to get in my personal life a little bit, you can look me up on Instagram @ChasingAntler. Jay, where can people reach you when you're not on the mic here?
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to once again invite you to give us a review on iTunes. If you're an Apple user, just go to the search bar and type in Big Buck Registry and you'll be able to link to the review section there. You can find us at bigbuckregistry.com/Facebook, and that's where you can actually have your big buck featured and be famous for a day for our 160,000 plus contingent diehard deer hunting fans. And all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all the instructions that you need will be right there on how to submit a deer for posting on our Facebook page. We're also on Twitter, bigbuckregistry.com/Twitter. You can find us on the Outdoor Podcast channel, outdoorpodcastchannel.com, and also on iTunes. And we're on Instagram, starting to get into that a little bit more. And if you would like to email us, it's Jay or Dusty at bigbuckregistry.com, or you can always give us a call at 724-613-2825. I think that's it, Dusty. That's a wrap, brother.
Big buck, everywhere, a big
buck. Excellent. Well, I'm Jay Scott.
And I'm Dusty Phillips.
This is the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast.
We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.